Hey guys, I want to take and show you guys how to operate this CNC today. So I'm going to take and make you guys this short little video. Follow along. You guys are welcome to watch this video while you're actually setting up the machine. I think it'll help. So first off, let's pull the camera down and bring you guys right here down to the electronics. We're going to open up the gate. Now we always keep the machine turned off. So we want to start by turning the machine on with the power strip. Right above here, we're actually going to get our power control module. At this point, we might as well just turn it on. This is what's going to actually send power to the motors. I don't know if you guys can hear it in the video, but I clearly heard those motors kick as they locked in place. And then down here in the corner, this is our actual computer. So we just want to take and turn that on. And when that green light comes on, we know it's powering up. Down here is the plasma cutter. Right now it's actually turned off. If we come all the way around to the back, we can hit that switch. And you guys can see it powers right up. Don't really worry about the settings or adjusting the settings on this. We'll talk about it in class. But really just leave the settings alone, and then the software will adjust like the amperage and everything there. We do have air actually connected to the plasma cutter as well. Now here at our shop, we just leave that thing on. There's no real need to actually turn it off. So we shouldn't actually take and adjust the regulator or anything. I don't really have a good way to show it to you guys because it's way up in the air for some reason. But trust me, we have air tied to the plasma cutter. We do not need to turn it off. All right, guys, this is the computer that we're going to be using to run our CNC. And we have two pieces of software that we really need here. One is Command CNC. It says P2 Plasma on it. And the other one here is SheetCam. So this is Command CNC. Next, we'll open up SheetCam. Here in Command CNC, we have some basic controls. Let me just kind of give you guys a quick overview. So over here is where we're actually going to have our G code when we actually import it. We have our auto, which is where our G code is, our manual, which we can take and use our load material button. I'll show you guys what that does here in just a minute. And then we have our MDI. This allows us to take and actually manually type in G code, basically allowing us to control the plasma cutter very precisely if we needed to do something in particular. We have some other various buttons down here. We have our e-stop active. Now that we've actually powered up our power control module down here in the case, we can actually take and turn this off. And at this point, we can actually move and operate the CNC. So with this, we can actually use the control buttons here on the keyboard. I know you guys can't see it, but we can actually run the CNC. And I don't know if you guys can hear that hum. We do have a stop button if we need it. And do not let me forget here, guys, we have our emergency stop button down here on the side of the actual case. So if you guys ever need it, you're more than welcome to use it. It is there for your use. Now let's switch over here to SheetCam. SheetCam is going to be our software to take our DXF file and turn it into G code. And how we're actually going to do that, guys, is we're going to go to File. We're going to take and you can either import a drawing or you could do a new part. We're going to do a new part. What I'm going to take and do is just find our file here. Now, I found our file, And as soon as I click on it, we're actually going to take and open up the drawing options. This right here is where we get into our scaling. So we can take and have either metric, inch, or some sort of custom scaling. Now remember here that this software really likes to be in metric. That's why it's taken to do it a 1-to-1 scale for the metric parts, because it basically converts everything into metric. It will take and do inches, but if you guys notice, it does a 1 to 25.4 scaling on it. Now we could do a custom scaling if we wanted to adjust something, but there's no real need to do that at this point. We'll just take and run inches. It does have our drawing position. I normally start in the bottom left. Once we actually do that, we can hit our done button and it will pull up our file. Now this is just a flower that I have. Once we actually have this, we can take and do some nesting here where we can take and adjust this if we really wanted to. Not super critical. We could take and right click on this. We can do an array of parts if that's what we wanted to do. An array allows us to take and specify a number of columns and rows and basically lay out a tremendous amount of parts at once and kind of put spacing between them, tell it what area it's actually going to fill, and we don't really need that. We're just going to take and do the one here as a demonstration. Now, once we actually have this, we're going to click back to our arrow here, our mouse button. And what we're going to do is set up an operation. Now, we can do lots of various stuff with this software, but we're going to be doing plasma cut. Once we actually get to it, we want to do an outside offset because I want the flower, not the plate. We have our layer. There's only really one layer. Where are we getting to? Should be on 1, 2, either or. Next, we have our tool here, which is going to be 45 amps on 14 gauge steel. These are all preset. So all we need to take and actually do with them is just set whatever we're running. So we're going to do 45 amps and I have 14 gauge steel on the table. It will set in our feed rate for us. We really don't need to adjust it. As well as most of these other settings in here, we actually just don't even need to set them. Now we may do a lead in or a lead out. On this, I don't really need to, so I'm just going to hit OK. Now once we actually have our part here and we have an operation set for it on this particular layer, all we really need to do at this point is just run the post processor. When we run the post processor, it's going to take and pull this up. Now I have G-code file here. It pulled it right up for me. The G-code file for this particular part, but we're just going to rewrite it. So we want to take and give it a name, single flower. It's an NGC file, so it's G-code. We're going to hit save, and for me, I'm just going to replace it. It should take and run this. As long as everything says that it's good, we are good, and we can just hit OK. And then we are good. It took and saved that file. Now, once we have that, we can drop back in here to Command CNC. We're going to click over to Auto. We're going to do Open. And all we need to do is just hit Recently Used, and it should be able to pull up our single flower file. Once we take and actually open this up, you can see the G-code is right here for it. Now, we have this in here, but we need to set up our table. So let me switch the camera over and I will show you guys how this actually operates. Now what I'm going to do is just use my arrow keys on the keyboard to just kind of run this thing over where you guys can actually see it. And what we want to do is start with just homing the machine. So there's the actual torch right there. If you guys notice that the torch is actually really high, it's very much not close to the material. If I was going to take and move it down next to the material, it would look like that. That's actually really close to the material right there. Now notice I'm just kind of moving this slow. We really don't need to move fast. I will tell you guys that if you're a little more comfortable with the machine, you can hold down shift and it will rapid the machine. I will tell you guys that that freaks me out, especially when new people are doing that. So I would suggest running it nice and slow. Now again, I'm going to take and raise up our Z here because I want to make sure it's far away from the table when we actually do any sort of homing. This will just guarantee that we're not going to hit anything. So with this, I'm going to take and hit the Home X button. And it's going to start to just home the X. So it's going to run it all the way over until it gets to the end and hits the little sensor. There we go. And then I'm just going to take and hit 0x. Then I'm going to take and home the Y. Now I want you guys to take note on this particular machine here. Notice how the torch actually overhangs on the frame slightly. I'm not really sure why they set it up that way, but it is in fact set up that way. So we want to just be careful that the torch is high enough that we don't accidentally run into the frame. Now that we've homed the X and the Y, we'll zero both of them out. So that's our 0, 0 point. And then what we're going to do is just run them over. And we want to set the torch over the top of the material. And now we can actually set for the height of the material. And we're just going to hit home our Z. Now once we've homed it, we can zero out the Z, and then we don't want to leave it here. What we want to do is just run it up a bit just to make sure we're not dragging that thing across the steel. Now we're going to take and find a place to cut here on this. I'm just going to take and kind of move this over. Let's move a little closer so I can kind of see where that torch is. And I'm going to tell you guys, you can get way precise with this. I always just eyeball it. That's pretty close right there. That's a good spot for it. Now at this point, this is going to be our new 0, 0. So we actually want to re-zero our X and re-zero our Y. The Z is already fine. We've already covered that. But we want to zero this out so that the machine knows that this right here is our starting point. Now, once we've zeroed out the machine, what we can actually do here is we're going to take and start this. Now, our plasma cutter is on. We have air connected to it. Power is to everything. We have this all homed and zeroed out to where we want to actually cut. All of our software should work at this point. Now we should be able to cut. Now, I do want to take into a quick note on here. Normally, the table is full of fluid at this point. We'll take and maintain that when we're actually doing a lot of heavy cutting. For this quick demonstration, I'm not going to fill the whole table full of fluid. It would just evaporate before we actually got back in here. So, for now, we'll run it dry. It won't hurt it, I'm not worried. Now, what we can do is hit run. If you guys notice, it didn't do anything though, and that's okay because you also need to take and hit resume. And there we go. That is a cut. I don't know if you guys could see it in the video. It actually caught the plate a little bit. So we'll have to be mindful of that. Really, with this, we want to take and make these cuts, pay attention to them, be mindful of what's actually happening. So this is completely automated. However, you still definitely need to be involved in the process. So it took and stopped. I actually let it run for just a second. So let it run air through the actual machine because it is loud and therefore going to script my audio. So at this point, the machine just comes up, it stops at the end. Now, if we want to take and do another cut, what we can do is just simply run this over randomly and find another spot. However, there is a better way to actually do this, and I want to show you guys that real quick. If you guys look in here where the actual drawing is, you can see that this thing's about 4.09 by 4.11 wide here. And what we can actually do with that is we can go over to our MDI. We can specify to offset the torch to a particular number. And what we can do is type in some G code. So we're going to do G0 because that's just a movement. And then we can specify an X. We'll do 4 1/4 because that'll give us a little bit of play. And then we'll specify a Y. And we'll do like 4 1/4. Give it a little bit of play there. We probably could go a little tighter than that, but and we don't necessarily have to, but I want to show you guys we could specify a Z as well. So once we actually do that and we hit this little green check mark, it'll take and jump over and go to its new location. Now we can still take and adjust this from here. So we can actually do a G0. Let's say we're going to do maybe X of 0. Y is the 4 1/4. And this time, we're not even going to take and put a Z in there. So you guys can see that as well. There we go. Now, this should be just offset of our last cut. So at this point, we can actually come down to our 0, and we want to zero out our Y, because that's the one that's ran up at this particular point. And now it's 0, 0. So this is our new starting point here. And at this point, we can actually make another cut. Now, I'm showing you guys this because this is primarily how we're going to be taking and running this here in our shop. If you are in a big production shop, it's much more common for them to set up a huge amount of parts and then just let the machine run. However, we're not going to cut that many parts. So we're going to do a lot of one-offs, a lot of special projects. And so because of that, we're going to take and kind of offset things and then do another cut. So normally, just so you guys are aware, we normally would set up a full sheet, cut a full sheet of parts or part of the sheet, and then take and set up another cut. But I want to take and show you guys this. So to make another cut, we're going to hit run and resume. All right, now we have 2 parts cut. Just to show you guys real quick, we do have a little magnetic tool we can use to pull those parts out. All right, guys. Now, we've made our cut. So now what? Well, if we're done with the machine, then we want to take and push this all the way back to the loading material section. So if we go to manual, we can actually have this loading material button up here. And what this does is it actually offsets the torch to the very corner of the machine, allowing us to load and unload material. Now, this button will actually pay attention to where the table is, not to where you actually set 0. So, doesn't matter where 0 is right now. If we hit load material, this thing will rush off and put itself in the back corner. Now, if we take and run the machine back out again, you guys can see it doesn't matter where I actually start this. Every time that I take and hit load material, it runs off to approximately the same spot. Now from here, guys, we are basically done. So what we're going to do is hit our press for e-stop. This will take and lock out the machine and keep it from actually operating. We can't hit the run button here anymore. Now, once we're actually done with this, we can pretty much just close this and quit it. We also want to take and do that to sheet cam here as well. We're just going to take and exit that. I will say I never save anything. We actually save the DXF file and we save the G-code file. We don't need to make a whole bunch of other saved files on this computer. At this point, we can just come up here and we can shut down our computer. We're going to hit our log off button and we just want to shut it down. All right, so now that the computer is actually shut down, let's just pull the camera off to the side here. And one, I did want to show you guys this because I forgot to earlier. There is our e-stop button. Really, you guys are welcome to hit this whenever you need to actually just hit it. But be aware that we don't want to leave it set. We just want to take and pop it back out by twisting it. And we want to leave it like that. Don't lock out the machine and then walk away. We always want to leave this open. And that's just how we're actually have it set up here. Now, if you guys do it different at your own shop, that's perfectly fine. Here, we just want to leave this loose so it's available to us when we need it. In the actual case here, remember we have our computer on this far side and it should be off already, but we do have our control module here as well, and we just want to make sure that we turn that off. And once we've turned that off, really we could just come down here to our power switch and then just turn our power switch off. Don't forget, guys, that the plasma cutter here is still turned on, and we just want to make sure we turn it off. The switch is right here in the back. We just want to make sure we turn that thing off so it doesn't run all night. All right, guys, that's pretty much how to operate that machine. It's just going to be really covering the basics here. We're not getting into all the particulars and such on it, but it should allow you guys to kind of set up and take down the machine, at least to kind of get you guys started. So thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you guys learned something, and we'll catch you guys for the next one.